I'm recording for those who couldn't join directly on Zoom today. It is my pleasure and my fortune to be discussing this wonderful text, Srimad Bhagavad Gita, with all of you today during this very wonderful, very auspicious month of Purushottam. Actually, according to the Vedic calendar, Purushottam month doesn't appear every year. It appears only once in 3 years, and it is considered most auspicious to perform spiritual activities during this month. So, this activity of reading the Bhagavad Gita helps us understand three subject matters. One, Jiva, or the living entity. Two, Ishvara, or the Supreme Person, or Bhagavan. And three, Prakriti, or material nature. It is said that the understanding of these three subject matters together is summum bonum, total understanding of reality. And the relationship between these living entities, these three subjects, which is the living entity Jiva, Ishvara, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and material nature, all this together is the summum bonum understanding of what is what. In the first 6 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita, we saw about the living entity. We saw the journey of the living entity. Arjuna began the Bhagavad Gita with a doubt. What is my duty? Should I fight in this ghastly war and kill my own near and dear ones? And Krishna immediately in the second chapter talked to him about his identity, our identity. We are not this body. The body is temporary. The relationships of this world are temporary. Whereas the eternal reality is our true nature as Atma, which is eternal, full of bliss and full of knowledge. And our eternal relationship with the Supreme Person. We also saw in the third chapter, Krishna described duty. And in the fourth chapter, Krishna described transcendental knowledge, which is required to overcome lust in order to perform duty. Krishna says, lust is the enemy of Kamayesha Krodayesha. Beautiful verse in the third chapter. Lust is the enemy of duty. And further in the fifth chapter, we saw the peace formula. Bhoktaram yagne tapasa sarva loka maheshwara suhridam sarva bhutanam nyatva mam shantir richati. The Supreme Lord is the supreme enjoyer. We are not the supreme enjoyer. We are not the enjoyer. We are that which should be enjoyed. He is the supreme proprietor. We don't own anything. We are not the proprietor of anything, including this body, and the life air within this body is not owned by us. We will have to give up these two things when we leave this body. And finally, even though he is the supreme enjoyer and the supreme proprietor, he is the best friend of each and every living entity. If we truly understand and realize these 3 points, we will be peaceful. Nyatva mam shantir richati. So having spoken about peace in the 6th chapter, the journey of the individual culminates in meditation, dhyana yoga. And the last verse of the 6th chapter, yoginam api sarvesham madgatena antaratmana shraddhavan bhajate yomam same yukta tamo mataha. Krishna says, of all the yogis who meditate, the topmost is one who focuses his meditation on me as the Supreme Person. So having ended the first 6 chapters, the journey of the individual, with that, he begins the description of the Supreme Person, Ishvara, and the relationship between the individual and the Ishvara in the 7th chapter. He says in the 7th chapter, Sutre Mani Gananiva, just like a pearl necklace is held together by the thread, even though we cannot see the thread that holds the pearl necklace together, without which all the pearls will disperse and there won't be any necklace. Just in that way, the Supreme Lord is the underlying base, the fundamental principle of everything. He gives many examples of that. He is the light from the sun, He is the heat from fire, He is the ability in man. We see so many people in this world perform wonderful activities beyond their capability. When we see that, we should be reminded of Krishna, we should be reminded of the supreme benevolent being. So, in the 8th chapter, he goes on to describe the culmination of this life. What does it lead to? Antakale chamameva smaran muktva kalevaram. Those who remember me at the end of this life, they attain my nature. So we discussed the topic of transmigration. We are not this body, we are not this mind, we are eternal sparks of consciousness. And depending on our guna and icha, or karma and icha, our activities that we have performed, and the desire we have at the end of life, we will remember one thing or the other at the end of the life, and based on that we attain our nature, we attain a new body. 9th chapter is the middle chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, and Krishna calls this Raja Vidya, the king of all knowledge. And he specifically says, he reveals this to Arjuna because Arjuna is anasuyave, without envy. So he is indirectly saying the readers of the Bhagavad Gita, like you and me, can realize the knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita if we are without envy. In reality, if any of you are anything like me, being without envy is very difficult. So let us consider what is the antidote of envy. The antidote of envy is love. And what is the seed of love? It is gratitude. We have so much to be grateful for in this life. We receive so much. So without focusing on the negatives, if we focus on what we receive and have gratitude in our heart, we can overcome envy and hence understand Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Very, very important point in the 9th chapter. And Krishna goes on to say later on in the 9th chapter that you can offer to me in devotion even small things like a leaf, a flower, some water, a fruit, and I accept the love with which it is accepted. Krishna is Rasagrahi, the Supreme Lord, God, or Samam Bonam, whatever you call him. He is Rasagrahi. He takes the essence of our activities. It doesn't matter whether we are offering him, for example, if we have moved to offer him money, it doesn't matter whether we offer him $1 or $1 million. It is the mood with which we offer him that. Very important point. So 10th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, we saw the seed verses, or the Chatushloki verses, the 4 verses which can be unpacked into the entire 700 verses of the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna revealed Sambandha, Abhidaya, and Prayojana. Sambandha is the relationship between the living entity and the Supreme Lord. Abhidaya is how, in the understanding of this relationship, the living entity should act, and Prayojana is the goal or the ripened fruit of that relationship. Very beautiful. So whereas the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita focused on what is love of God, 10th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita focuses on how to love God. And hence Krishna says, this is even more confidential knowledge than what I have spoken before. Then we saw the amazing and mystical 11th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna reveals 3 of his forms, his universal form with so many hands, so many mouths, that destroys, he says, Kalosmin loke, Kalosmin loke Kshayasmrit Pravrito. He says, time I am the destroyer of this world. So now recently, the movie called Oppenheimer was released, and I haven't seen the movie. I don't particularly recommend seeing it or anything. But Oppenheimer, Robert Oppenheimer, the father of the Manhattan Project, he spoke these verses when he saw the destruction that his invention, that the atomic bomb, had created. Kalosmin loke shayakrit pravritto means I am time, the destroyer of all the worlds. Amazing verse. Another amazing verse in the 11th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita is after Krishna saw all this, Arjuna saw all this vision that Krishna had given him in the form of the universal form, and he was getting afraid. Krishna tells him, "O Arjuna, please fight. Nimitta Bhatram Bhavasavya Sachin. Be the cause of my desire. Be the instrument of in my hands. Please fight." Amazing instruction. So this is the instruction for us also, whether we are in whatever profession, whether we are a student, a teacher, an entrepreneur, engineer, doctor, whatever we are, the goal of our profession, the goal of our activities, not just profession, in personal life, whether we are a father or a son or a friend or a spouse, the goal of those relationships is nimitta matram bhavasabhi sachin, to become the instrument of Krishna. And what does Krishna want? Krishna wants love. Krishna wants love, us to love him, and through that love every living entity. Very important. So 12th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, beautiful chapter, 20 verses, which describe the devotee, the one who loves Krishna. Very wonderful verses. And last week we saw the 13th chapter, which is the beginning. So while the 7th to 12th chapters are on the topic of God and the devotee, the 13th to 17th chapters, including half of the 18th chapter, the last chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, are on the topic of jnana, or knowledge of this world, specifically Prakriti. So the 13th chapter begins with 6 questions from Arjuna. He wants to know what is Kshetra, or the field of activity, and Kshetrajna, the knower of the field of activity. He wants to know who is Prakriti and who is Purusha, who is to be enjoyed and who is the supreme enjoyer. And he also further wants to know what is Jnanam, or real knowledge, and Neyam, the object of knowledge. Very interesting. Krishna then describes the field as this body, the knower of the field as twofold. One, the Atma, the infinitesimal living entity, and the Supreme Lord, the Paramatma, who is in our heart. The difference, of course, is the living entity knows this field, just this body, whereas the Supreme Lord knows all the bodies and everything that is contained within this universe. And knowledge refers to understanding who we are, that is Jnanam. Very interestingly, Jnanam and Neyam are same in transcendence. In science, for example, the knowledge and the object of knowledge are different. I am observing something, I am different from that something. Whereas in self-realization, I am observing myself, I am trying to understand, first of all, who I am. So the object of knowledge and the knower of knowledge is the same. Or the knowledge and the object of knowledge is also the same. Then in the 8th to 12th verses, some of my favorite verses in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna talks about what is the items of knowledge. In fact, Krishna lists 20 items of knowledge, and he says anything beyond this is not important. It is not real knowledge. And what is the first item of knowledge he lists? Amanitvam, or humility. Amanitvam, adambitvam. Humility and pridelessness are the beginning of knowledge, ladies and gentlemen. If we do not have humility, we don't have the open mind to acquire actual knowledge. It's very interesting. In the 15th chapter, which Yamuna Jivana Prabhu will describe in the coming week, the first verse talks about an inverted banyan tree. Urdhva moolam ato shakam. In fact, in this Purushottam Mass that I described in the beginning today, it is very auspicious to read the Purushottam Yoga of the 15th chapter. So it is very nicely arranged by Krishna that next week within Purushottam Mass, Yamuna Jivana Prabhu will describe the 15th chapter to us. So in this 15th chapter, the world is described as an inverted reflection of reality. There is the spiritual sky, the spiritual world, Vaikunta, the world without entropy, the world without anxiety. And then there is this world, and this world is said to be a reflection or a shadow of the real world. So that this can be seen in the 8th to 12th verses of the 13th chapter. How can it be seen? See, we are taught in kindergarten perhaps that you have to be humble. Humility is simple. You have to treat people with respect. You have to so on and so on. Basic things in life. Those are the most important things, Prabhus and Matajis, what we are taught in kindergarten. Whereas what we are taught later on in life, the details of how a transistor works, or how to perform dental surgery, or whatever it is we are taught in our doctorate and PhD and masters and baccalaureate degrees, are less important knowledge. They are secondary knowledge, they are vocational knowledge. So in this world, the most important thing is taught in kindergarten and not in the most advanced classes, because this world is the perverted reflection of reality. In verses 13 to 19, Krishna describes who to get this knowledge from. We also saw that in the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. And finally, Krishna describes Prakriti, Purusha and their contact. How does the living entity interact with material nature? Prakriti means material nature, and Purusha means Ishvara or Krishna, the supreme enjoyer. How does the living entity interact with material nature, and what is the relationship between God and material nature? In that, Krishna says, Devi Isha Gunamayi Mamamaya Duratyaya Mameveye Prapadyante Maya Metam Tarantite. What does that mean? Devi Isha Gunamayi, the divine material nature that you see around us, earth, water, fire, air, ether, and all that it constitutes, this notebook, this body, my cell phone, my laptop, everything, the whole universe. He is the supreme proprietor of Mama Maya Duratyeya Mameveye Prapadyante Maya Metam Tarantite. It is very difficult to overcome this material nature. We see in our life this is true if we are self-aware. In order to succeed in anything material, it is quite difficult. There is so much competition, and it takes a lifetime of dedication to get to the top of your field, for example, right? Krishna is saying it is very difficult to overcome material nature, but if you surrender unto me, it becomes very, very easy. So if you're afraid of dogs, like my wife is afraid of dogs, and you see you're on the street at night, you come up against a big vicious dog, who do you call out to? You call out to the owner of the dog, right? So that he can put it in a leash and take it inside. Similarly, we call out to the owner of Prakriti, material nature, and we surrender to him in order to achieve success over material nature also. So the relationship between Prakriti and us is we come under its control. Krishna talks about gunas, and that becomes the topic of the 14th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Guna means a rope, literally, but in this context, guna means the modes of material nature. We already saw in the previous chapter various modes of material nature. We saw how they keep us in contact, the body and soul in contact, and why we take birth again and again. We will talk about this more. The body is made from the Panchabhutas, as we have seen before, but the soul is made of antimatter. It is not made out of something that degrades. So the soul, how does this antimatter come in contact with the body? We also already saw that when we have material desire, we get a material body, so that we can fulfill those desires by acting within this world. and we further get material desire. It's like scratching an itch. If you scratch it some, you want to scratch it more. So again and again we take birth in this world. And this word guna is appears so many times in these verses throughout the Bhagavad Gita. In the first several verses you see over there, the verses in chapters 3 and 4, it appears in the um, context of being the influencer of us. The modes of material nature influence us. In chapter 7, it appears as the three modes of material nature together constitute material energy or prakriti or maya. The 13th chapter is clarified that the living entity is controlled by the modes of material nature. The living entity in material nature thus follows the way of life, enjoying the three modes of nature. This is due to his association with that material nature. Thus he meets with good and evil among various species. So, ladies and gentlemen, this world is dual. It's like two sides of the same coin. There is happiness and there is distress. There is ephemeral happiness. This world, there is no real happiness. There is fleeting happiness. And there is distress. Similarly, there is heat and cold. There is friends and enemies. So this occurs because we operate within the three modes of material nature. It is the invisible shackle. So one who goes to jail is some cuffs are put on him, some shackles are put on him, he is put behind prison bars. But these things are visible to the one who is jailed. But the nature of this world is the shackles that are put on us, the modes of material nature, are invisible. Because of our own desire, shackles are put on us which are invisible. I lost my passport in the Uber one time in Singapore, and I had to go to the police station to file a report. Thankfully, the Uber driver had returned it, the passport, to the police station, and I just had to collect it. But while I was there, crime statistics were reported. So the crimes are not all equal, right? A homicide has a different level of intensity to sexual assault, which has a different level of intensity to a robbery, or which has a different level of intensity definitely to a murder, right? So the punishment for the crime is also not equal. But it is very important to understand that punishment is not because Krishna wants to take revenge or anything like that. Punishment has, even in this society, one who breaks the laws and harms other human beings has to be punished. If they are not punished, only anarchy will remain, right? Everybody will do whatever they want. So the punishment should be in a way that it's not administered properly by the governments in this world. It's too cruel, perhaps, or too lenient in some parts of the world. If it is administered properly, it reforms the person and it benefits the wrongdoer, it benefits the society. Just like that, even though it sounds harsh, this world is a jail and we are undergoing reformation in this world. That is, so I promise that the last 6 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita will describe the world. And now I am saying that Krishna says that the world is constitutes the three modes of material nature: sattva, rajas, and tamas, goodness, passion, and ignorance. And these three are the shackles that are put on us in the prison of this world. Looking at this picture will greatly help us. This picture has multiple parts, so I'll take you through it. You see two men here. One is a boss holding a stick, and another is a worker who is digging up earth. So maybe the boss has a mining company or whatever he has, or some excavation or landscaping, and the worker is his employee. They are both attached to several strings. The boss is also attached, and the employee is also attached because they are in bodily consciousness. They think of themselves as the body, They think of themselves as the boss and the employee, as father and mother, and all these upadhis or designations is what they think is their identity. They have shackles attached to them. The extent of the shackles depend on the extent of our desire or our offense. For example, the human body has a certain radius of freedom. So we do have free will within this body, but the free will is infinitesimal. Whereas animal body has a different level of free will, proportional to the offense, which is proportional to our level of selfishness. So the more selfless we become, the more bigger the rope we get. So the more freedom we have, even in this life. And these three beautiful ladies, decorated in yellow, red, and dark purple color, they are controlling the strings attached to these two men. Not just these two men, ladies and gentlemen, all of us. These three modes are representatives of the three modes of material nature. These three women are representatives of the three modes of material nature. In yellow, we have goodness, in red, we have passion, and in dark purple, we have ignorance. And above this all, Devi Isha Gunamai is Krishna, the proprietor of everything, the enjoyer of everything. So, this is this world, ladies and gentlemen. This is the world in which we live. We have shackles attached to us because of our bodily consciousness. And depending on our desire, the material nature performs the activity. And Krishna is the overseer and the permitter of these activities. So Arjuna, being very intelligent and speaking on our behalf, he asks four questions. What are these three modes of material nature? How do these work? How do they bind up the jivas? How to get free? Very intelligent questions. You are in jail and you suddenly wake up from coma. You will ask these four questions. Why? What is this jail? How does it work? How am I being put in this jail? And how do I get free? Most important question is, how do I get free from this jail? Rambhuya pravikshyami jnanam jnanam uttamam yajñatva munaya sarve param siddhim mito gata. Again I shall declare to you the supreme wisdom. Jnanam jnanam uttamam. The best of all knowledge, knowing which all the sages have attained the supreme perfection. So when I read the Bhagavad Gita first few times, I had this question. I got the answer much later on. Krishna is saying here, this is the best of knowledge. But Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, which we have discussed earlier, a sage from 400 years ago, he says these middle six chapters are the treasure in the treasure box. They are the most important knowledge. And Krishna also says in the ninth chapter, that ninth chapter is Raja Vidya, the king of all knowledge. But how is Krishna saying here again, this is the best of knowledge? So if you look at the Sanskrit, you understand Jnanam Uttamam. So the last six chapters of the Bhagavad Gita from 13 to 18 are on Jnana or Jnana Yoga, as I have described before, the knowledge of this world. Of that knowledge, this chapter is the supreme, the most important chapter. Very important chapter, 14th chapter. Why do you call this knowledge as best of all? By becoming fixed in this knowledge, one can attain to my nature. We have already discussed this, how by understanding and realizing the Bhagavad Gita, we will remember Krishna at the end of this life and we will attain his nature. Then Krishna in the third verse goes on to describe Mama Yonir Mahad Brahma Tasman Garbham. So let's analyze this verse a little bit. So there is Krishna, there is the Mahad Brahma. Mahad Brahma refers to Prakriti or the material energy as a whole, the sum total material elements. Then there is Jivas. So just like We enter the womb of our mother by impregnation by our father's semen. Just like that, but not at all like that in a way. Krishna, by his vision, he impregnates the living entities into material nature. So the going theory in science for creation or the beginning of the universe is Big Bang theory. So they say, according to this theory, that at time t equal to 0, there was a big bang. There was a infinitely dense, infinitely small substance, material nature, which began to expand suddenly. So they call it a big bang at time t equal to 0. They don't tell you where that energy of expansion comes from. They say that question is moot, and they don't tell you who that energy belongs to. For that, the Bhagavad Gita exists to tell us how creation began. So, in a way, there is time t equal to 0. At time t equal to 0, the beginning of the universe, in the infinitely dense Prakriti, the Prakriti itself is inactive. Okay, but Krishna glances on Prakriti, and through his vision, the jivas are impregnated into material nature. So I think Kusum or Ukti, I think Ukti asked me previously who is Shiva and who is Durga and so on. When we were talking about Krishna's nature as the Supreme, as the One Supreme. Here actually it comes out. I will describe this specifically in relation to that question that came up earlier. The vision of Krishna, which impregnates Mahat Brahma or Prakriti, that vision is Shiva. Shiva is the original. Shiva is our father, our original father in this world. And as that vision impregnates us into Prakriti, Prakriti is Durga or Parvati, who is our mother in this universe. So our father in this universe is Shiva, our mother in this universe is Durga, and our original father is Krishna. We will see this in today's verses also further, how he is the original father. There we go. So there are so many slogans of universal brotherhood that certain churches propound, but for universal brotherhood, for you, me, and everyone else to be brothers and sisters, we need to have a universal father. So universal fatherhood is what the Bhagavad Gita teaches us. He is the seed-giving father of everyone. Krishna is the seed-giving father of everyone. He puts us in this material world because we have avidya or ignorance. We have forgotten our true nature and we want to enjoy separately from Him. And from that ignorance, there is ignorant desire. And depending on the desire, we get various bodies. There are 8.4 million species of life. Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the postgraduate study of the Bhagavad Gita, tells us there are 8.4 million species of life. Very interestingly, this also reconciles with what science says. Science has so far identified less than 2 billion species of life, but science also scientists estimate that there are a further 6 plus billion species of life, million, sorry, not billion, million species of life, which are yet to be found. So by that estimation, there are somewhere between 8 and 8.7 million species of life according to science, which is what the Vedic literatures, Srimad Bhagavatam also tells us. Why are there so many different types of bodies? Why are there so many different species? Because there are so many different desires. We will see this today. There is the mode of material nature, there are desires within that mode of material nature, goodness, passion, and ignorance. Goodness is born of knowledge, passion is born of desire, and ignorance is born of tamas or darkness. And the effect of each of these is also given in the Bhagavad Gita. Knowledge leads to illumination. We saw in the third chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, fourth and third chapters, if one has transcendental knowledge, one is able to do his duty. and duty leads to purification. And desires lead to intense craving. This is the nature of being passionate, and this is something that sports persons should have to succeed. For example, is this passion. They have this desire to win that Olympic gold medal, and they work and they work and they work their backside off over 4 years to win that Olympic gold medal. That intense craving is the effect of the Rajoguna, or the passion, mode of passion. And finally, there is darkness, which leads to confusion. All three, though, lead to bondage. It's obvious that darkness leads to bondage. One who is in the mode of darkness becomes very lazy and or crazy. These are persons who have a tendency to get addicted, and so on and so forth. It is obvious that passion leads to bondage also, because passionate activity has always reactions, and that reaction is cyclical, and the fruitive work leads to bondage. But what is less obvious is even acting within goodness leads to bondage, because acting within goodness gives us ephemeral happiness and knowledge, and the pride that arises out of having that knowledge and happiness leads to bondage also. So, one of Srila Prabhupada's disciples, Srila Prabhupada, our author of Bhagavad Gita, as it is, one of his disciples, Radhanath Swami, he says, goodness is not good enough. Just being a good person is not good enough. One has to become a devotee. Of course, being a good person is better than the other stuff, but it is not black and white, ladies and gentlemen. We should not think we are in one of these three modes and that's it. Actually, there is constant competition in our consciousness for one of these modes to take over. Just like this three-way tug of war, there is goodness which is pulling in one direction, there is passion which is pulling in another direction, and there is ignorance which is pulling in another direction. And we are being tugged at every moment on all these three sides. If we are self-aware and self-honest, we can feel this tugging. Time to time, life becomes so difficult when we are being pulled in all these three directions. So we have to transcend these modes of material nature in order to be actually peaceful. These three modes of material nature are pulling us in the three different directions constantly, only because we don't realize we are not the proprietor. We don't realize we are not the enjoyer, and we don't realize Krishna is our best friend. If we realize these three things, then automatically the tug of the modes of material nature become less intense, and we become very peaceful. When we are in the mode of goodness, Krishna says all the 9 gates of the body become illumined with knowledge and happiness. We are in the mode of passion. Greed is the predominating. Greed, attachment, desire, and overwork. Workaholics are in the mode of passion. And those who are in the mode of ignorance are inattentive, careless, in illusion, basically. So, in colors also, there are 3 basic colors, if you remember from your high school or whatever. RBG, red, blue, and green. And the mixture of these 3 colors leads to so many different colors. I was checking before today's session. These 3 colors, when mixed, lead to more than 1 billion combinations. Even by a simple computer, can generate more than 1 billion different colors from the mixture of these 3 colors. Similarly, the 3 modes of material nature, depending on which side is pulling more and which side is pulling to what degree, can lead to so many different kinds of desires and actions and reactions and people. The people we see, they are being controlled like wooden puppets by these 3 modes of material nature, and it depends on the tug of the modes on them. Progress in any field, it is very much required to be aware of one's own nature, habits, weaknesses, and special abilities. It's very important to be self-aware. So at the end of today's session, I have a very interesting Guna test, or the test of modes of material nature. It's for you to do. I will share it with you. I will take you through simple questions, 18 different questions, and you will answer for yourself. You don't have to share with anyone where you lie in these questions, and it gives you an idea which mode of material nature you are associated with most at this point. This has been very helpful for me, and as my meditation practice has become stronger over the last decade, and I read the Bhagavad Gita more and more, I have seen personally myself move from the lower to the higher modes of material nature. It increases the quality of life tremendously. Krishna also describes that those who are in goodness eventually attain the higher planetary systems, planes of higher planetary existence. Those who are in the mode of passion attain the earthly planets. So, by definition, all of us are very much in the mode of passion. And those who are in the mode of darkness attain animal kingdom. Short term consequence of being in goodness is knowledge, being in passion is greed, and being in darkness is carelessness. And goodness purifies, passion gives misery. This was very difficult for me to accept when I read the Bhagavad Gita the first time, because all my life I had been told, be passionate in what you do. I was in science, so be passionate in science, be passionate in engineering, and select a field you're passionate about. And then Krishna not only says passion leads to greed, but he also says it leads to misery. So this was very difficult to accept, but true nonetheless, which as you go deeper in your meditation practice, you will find it easier to accept. So the mode of passion begins sweet but turns bitter. It gives misery eventually. The mode of darkness puts one in ignorance. Urdhvam gachanti sattvastha madhye tishtanti rajasa jaganya guna vrittistha ado gachanti tamasa. Those situated in the modes of goodness gradually go upward to the higher planets. Those in the mode of passion live on earthly planets, and those in the abominable mode of ignorance go down to the hellish worlds. But one thing important to note is all of us can change this as we practice God consciousness or Krishna consciousness. We elevate ourselves to the higher modes of material nature. So then Arjuna asks a very, very pivotal question. So everything is done by the modes actually. So I am not the doer, modes are the doer. Yes, in all activities, no other performer is at work than those modes of material nature. Very important to understand. This is one of the key teachings of the Bhagavad Gita, which no other text gives us, but is so important in life is we shouldn't think of ourselves as the doer of activities. We are only the desirer. The modes of material nature conjure together how the activity is done, and the Supreme Lord is the permitter and overseer of everything. Freedom from it means complete freedom. Yes, freedom from birth, death, old age, and their distresses, and can enjoy nectar even in this life. Very important again. So, if we get free from the modes of material nature, if we get beyond this conception that we are the body, and we understand we are eternally part and parcel of the Supreme Being, even when we are in this life, we can be so happy. So, this body is actually not limiting, it's only limiting because we are attached to this body. We think we are this body, we are our mind. When we think and we act from that platform, we feel pain, we feel distress, we feel suffering. If we go beyond the platform of this body, we we will not feel pain. We will not be attached to that pain. So the soul will not suffer. Pain will be there. I mean, people who go beyond this body also can get cancer and diseases, but the distress from these diseases, the distress from that cancer is not there. And hence we become so blissful and joyful. There is this amazing disciple of Srila Prabhupada, his name is Jayapataka Swami. I will send you a link about him later in the WhatsApp group. He has had stroke after stroke, and his face is even getting deformed, and he is in such his body is in such physical agony, but he is so transcendental and beyond that, that whenever I get to meet with him, for example, he is so joyful. Jayapataka Swami is so humorous. He jokes about things, even though his speech is slurred now. Unbelievable, because he enjoys nectar even in this body. He is beyond the conception that he is this body. And Krishna, Arjuna, as predictable, asks what are the symptoms of someone beyond the modes of material nature? What is their behavior? And how do I become one of them? What is the process of transcending? Mam chayo vibichareන bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatityetan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. Seminal verse of the Bhagavad Gita, ladies and gentlemen. One who engages in full devotional service, avyabhicharena bhakti, unfailing in all circumstances, at once transcends the modes of material nature and thus comes to the level of Brahman, Brahma Bhuyaya Kalpate. Very, very important. So Krishna comes back to the topic of love, loving devotional service. If we engage in loving devotional service of the perfect, supreme, infinite being, we transcend the modes of material nature. The dog that was about to attack us is now on leash and called off. Amazing. Very important. And performing loving devotional service, just because this verse is in Sanskrit and Krishna spoke it when he was in India, doesn't mean it's an Indian thing. Performing loving devotional service means having that heart to understand who we are, who he is, and perform all our activities according to that. We don't have to wear an Indian dress, we don't have to wear tilak, we don't have to do any of those cultural things, but the consciousness or the heart behind our activities being full of love is the key. That's what is avyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate. So the Brahman, Brahma Bhuyaya Kalpate, is beyond Rajas, Tamas and Sattva, the three modes of material nature. But Krishna had said previously, by devotion you attain me. Antakale chamameva smaran muktva kalemaram. You attain my nature, he had said. So Arjuna confirms that do we attain Brahman or do we attain you? And Krishna says, I am the basis of impersonal Brahman. Very important. There are many schools of thought when it comes to the absolute truth, even within the Vedic literatures. But ultimately, this understanding that there are three levels of realization of absolute truth, summum bonum reality, or the infinite, is the prevailing one, which is the lowest level of realization is the impersonal absolute truth, the Brahman or the Brahma Jyoti. Then there is the realization of the Paramatma in our heart. Just like a gulab jamun. All of you, gulab jamun is an Indian sweet. All of you are familiar, I think. It's a round, spherical sweet which is made from milk products, and it's fried and then soaked in sugar syrup, and it smells wonderful, it looks wonderful, it tastes wonderful. But let us say someone is in prison and there is a sweet shop near prison, and the smell of this gulab jamun is coming to this person can only realize it to the level of the smell, but he doesn't know what it looks like, how it tastes like. As opposed to that, so that is like realizing the Brahman or the impersonal feature of the Supreme. As opposed to that, let us say a person who is out of prison and he is walking by the sweet shop. He can not only smell the gulab jamun, but he can see, oh, it looks so nice. A round, smooth ball placed in, golden syrup. It looks so nice with some saffron and things like that. I'm getting hungry as I describe this. So that is like realizing the Paramatma, the divinity in our heart. But higher than that is the person who walks into the shop, procures the gulab jamun and tastes it. When you taste the gulab jamun, there is the smell, there is the sight, but higher than that, there is the taste of the gulab jamun. So that is like realizing the supreme person or Bhagavan, Krishna. So that is the 14th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita on the invisible prison bars or the shackles that are put on us. Guna Tharai Vibhaga Yoga in Sanskrit, yoga through knowledge of the modes of material nature. This is the nature of this world, Prabhus and Matajis. Whether we like it or not, we have shackles on us. We know we have shackles. Let us surrender and accept that we have these shackles and let's go beyond these shackles. So we saw how the soul associates with nature, how the three modes of material nature bind us, what is the working, the effect, and the result of the modes of material nature, and very importantly, we saw how to rise above the modes of material nature. So that is the 14th chapter. I will stop the presentation here and open the forum up to questions, thoughts, comments, suggestions. Please feel free to unmute and speak.
Grace, how you doing? This is True Kepra.
Hi, True.
I appreciate today's class.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, yes, sir. I'm struggling with the passion part, and the reason why is because, like how you said, right? You were told to have passion in what you do for school. I'm not quoting you word for word, and even me, I was taught the same thing, and I've even been given compliments about my passion when I speak. I speak to the youth. I do community work and I speak to the youth. I've also done poetry, and the thing that comes up all the time as a compliment is the passion. The way. And so as I'm listening, I'm like, man, the thing that everybody gives me positive feedback is actually shackles. So I said struggling. I should say that I'm pondering on that more.
I have gone through the same journey of struggle with this. Passion especially gives misery, Krishna says. What my understanding has evolved to true is as follows. So fundamentally, when one is passionate, I mean, the colloquial use of the word passion, you're passionate, that compliment is different perhaps. But fundamentally, being passionate involves asking the question, what is in it for me? When we do something out of passion, uh, we are fundamentally looking for something for ourselves to come out of it. Whereas, if we are doing something out of goodness, we don't have that question. We are doing it out of duty. If you are speaking to youth and you are trying to inspire them and encourage them, if your consciousness is um, I have this position and this resources in my life, this experience and this understanding in my life. It is my duty to give back to others, and hence I am speaking to the youth. That is in the mode of goodness. As opposed to that, if one is speaking in the same circumstances to the youth, but one has a subtle feeling of wanting to be popular, wanting to be valued, wanting to be famous, and things like that. That is in the mode of passion. So um, some of this is colloquial parlance, where passion is used in positive connotation. There is nothing wrong with that. But in the words of the Bhagavad Gita, Rajoguna, which is only translated as passion, English is a one dimensional language in some ways. But Rajoguna, that word in it means that one is looking for something for himself. What's in it for me? So that's where Krishna is saying, when you have that consciousness, it becomes a shackle for you. Is that helpful?
Very much so. Thank you.
Thank you, True. Any other questions, comments? I have a Guna test we'll go through quickly after the question and answer session. Ukti?
Yes, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Okay, talking about that passion, do we not have passion for God?
Great question. So I talked about the inverted banyan tree, how this world is the reflection of reality. It's the perverted reality. It's not a direct reality. So in that regard, all the qualities of the spiritual world are present in this world. So if there is any quality in this world, it's a perverted reflection of what is present in the spiritual world. And the same is true for passion. The passion that exists for Krishna beyond the modes of material nature are pure. The gopis of Vrindavan are passionate for Krishna. In fact, one of the great acharyas, one of the great sages, Rupa Goswami, says how the only way to attain love of Godhead is this intense greed to buy it wherever it is available. Laulyam is the word he uses. The book is called Padyavali, a very, very elevated text. And Laulyam means greed. So how can there be greed in that transcendental exchange of love between God and his devotee? That is purified greed. That is greed for Krishna, which is different from the greed of this world. So everything that is present in the spiritual world is present here, except envy. Envy is not present in the spiritual world. It is a perverted reflection of desire, spiritual desire, envy. So the reason we are in this world and not that is that fundamental envy of Krishna. Is that helpful?
Yes, yes. I have another question though.
Yes, please.
Okay, so we are not this body, we are the soul, we are the Atman, right?
Yes.
So we're supposed to look at ourselves as souls, and we're supposed to look at other people as souls.
Yes.
How do we best practice that?
Well, one of my mentors, I asked the exact same question maybe now 15 years ago. So this mentor, his name is Aravind. He used to come to MIT and give these classes when I was a PhD student. And I asked almost the exact same question. How am I supposed to look at others as spirit souls, and how do we practice this? And he said, fake it till you make it. There is a beautiful verse in the Bhagavad Gita, Vidya Vinaya Sampanni, Brahmine Gavi Hastini, Sunichaiva Swapakecha, Pandita Samadarshinaha. A Pandita, or a learned person, sees as equal a friend, an enemy, a person who is a killer of animals, and a Brahmana, or a person who is learned, a cow, an elephant, and all living entities he sees as equal. So the practice that leads us to that samadarshana, or equal vision, is knowledge, is attainment of knowledge. Pandita, we have to become a pandita. Only a Pandita will have Samadarshana. So, reading the Bhagavad Gita, chanting of the Mahamantra, that is what will get us there. Is that helpful?
Yes, thank you so much.
Until then, we can fake it till we make it. We can forcefully try to see everyone as equal. That's not the ultimate state, but it helps. Any other discussion before we do a quick Guna test? Alright, I'm gonna get into this Guna test. I'm very excited about it. I have 18 very simple questions for you, ladies and gentlemen. And all you have to do is note down in your phone or a piece of paper whether you are A, B, or C for each of these questions. The initial questions are very, very simple, very, very on the surface, and then it becomes slightly more involved as we go. The first question is on color. Do you prefer lighter colors, whites and yellows and light greens and light blues? Or do you prefer bright colors? So A would be light colors, B would be bright colors, C would be dark and gothic colors. So just make a note A, B, or C, and just count how many A's, how many B's, and how many C's you get for yourself. This is a test for yourself. You don't have to share it with anyone. Okay. At what time do you wake up? It's 4 to 6 a.m., which is called Brahma Muhurta. 6 to 8 a.m. or after 8 a.m. A, B, and C. Simple question. All right.
No. I know this is a simple question, but is this about what time you have to wake up or what time you prefer?
What time do you actually wake up?
Well, I'm sorry, my AirPods are acting up. Can you hear me clearly?
I did hear you, true. What time do you actually wake up? What time do you actually wake up? When do you wake up?
Two.
On a day-to-day basis, on an average, when do you wake up? 4 to 6, 6 to 8, or after 8? Just note it down.
So it's not about preference, it's about what you do. Okay.
Yes, this is all about what you do.
Okay, got it.
How long do you sleep and how do you sleep? Do you sleep peacefully? Do you have a lot of dreams? And when you wake up, are you lazy and morose? Do you sleep 7 hours? Or do you sleep more than 8 hours? Or do you sleep more than 10 hours? Fourth question, what do you read? And one of my friends said he doesn't read at all. In that case, what do you prefer to read? But if you read, what do you actually read? Do you read autobiography of a yogi? Or do you read Bhagavad Gita, spiritual books? Or do you read books which are self-help books which can improve your personality or make you more wealthy? Or do you read fictional books? There is no right or wrong answer. This is only to help us self-evaluate where we are and where we want to get to. Okay? And no need to share this with anyone. This is just for yourself. It's true. Do you have a question? All right. Question number 5. What kind of movies do you see? Do you see knowledge-based movies or education-based movies? Do you see romance or family-based movies? Or do you see horror movies? So this is one thing I cannot do is watch horror movies. I'm always too scared to watch horror movies. This is an interesting question. This really changed in my life over the last decade and a half. When are you creative? I am a fundamentally creative person. I have more than 200 patents and patent applications to my name. And it significantly changed for me when I was in school, when I was in college. I used to be creative at night, but by the practice of Bhagavad Gita and chanting every day, it has moved to early morning. So when are you creative? A, B, or C? When you are sick, are you understanding and you take appropriate rest? Or are you negligent and you continue to work and over endeavor? Or are you not aware? If any of these answers, it's more than one, you note down both A and B or B and C. It's okay. Music. What kind of music do you prefer? Classical and pleasant music, passionate and aggressive music, and sad or heavy metal kind of music. Temperament. Are you generally calm and cheerful and steady? It doesn't matter whether you're introverted or extroverted. This is not about being extroverted or bubbly or anything like that. Are you generally cheerful? For example, my daughter, 2-year-old daughter, when she wakes up, she smiles. She's clearly generally cheerful if she does that. Are you moody and short tempered? Are you irritable and lethargic? Memory is a good indicator of the gunas we are in. Do you have a good memory, normal memory, and weak memory? Anger. Do you get angry very often, somewhat often, or very less? I cannot say I get angry very less. Area of improvement. How often do you lie? Never. Yeah, if you're Jesus Christ or something. B, if you lie, say some white lies depending on a situation. And if you're Pinocchio, you're C. Speech. Do you speak pleasingly to others? Sweet speech, or are you aggressive? Are you negative and dull? Cleanliness. Do you always stay clean? You somewhat clean. The state of your room will give you an idea. And this is only about today where you are at. And my experience is you go from right to left as you practice spiritual life. Charity, how often do you give? Generosity is an important feature of the different gunas. Sometimes you give, rarely you give. How easily do you forgive? Do you forgive easily? You forgive with a little endeavor. And I know some people who keep complaining and never forgive also. And final question, in difficult times, are you patient and resourceful? Which is you remain calm and you try to solve the problem. You're distraught and tensed. You become very anxious. And finally, you blame others and the situation and the circumstance and even God. So that is the guna test. Depending on how many A's, B's, and C's you got, A's refer to the mode of goodness, B's refer to the mode of passion, and C's refer to the mode of darkness. You can calculate the percentage of influence of each of the modes for yourself. And do this test again. We will share the recording with you. Do this test again in 1 year after chanting the Mahamantra every day and reading the Bhagavad Gita often. I guarantee to you the percentage on goodness will increase and the percentages of passion and darkness will decrease. Especially over a substantial period of time like a year, this is a science, ladies and gentlemen, in my personal experience. It improves our disposition and quality of life tremendously. I hope that Guna test was helpful. I really enjoyed putting that together. Any thoughts, final parting thoughts or comments, please?
Thank you, Prakash. Everything was really good today.
Thank you, Nilesh. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I
Thank
like the Gunatis.
Thank you, Kusum. Convey my regards to Bharat also.
Sure, thanks.
Hare Krishna. Hare
Hare
Krishna,
Krishna.
everyone. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, everyone. My gratitude to all of you for continuing to join. Only very, very special souls can hear the entire Bhagavad Gita, and each and every one of you are that. Thank you so much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.